All right, welcome to series number 2. This is where we apply all the lessons learned from series number 1. And if you haven't seen that series, maybe worth pausing here and checking that out, as this is a journey, my dev journey, where I'm trying to improve my ability to release games. I can start a lot of games, like a lot of us. It's easy to start, easy to come up with ideas, but it is really difficult to finish, especially those bigger projects. And so I wanted to take a step back from those bigger projects and try to figure out what I could do to improve myself as a game dev and to improve my ability to finish. And a lot of it comes down to really just applying all the lessons that YouTubers over the years have been preaching. Smaller projects, a smaller scope, shorter iterations. And while we hear those things, we don't necessarily practice those things. I think for me personally, one of the things I always do is I go, okay, I got this idea. Let me POC it, right? Proof of concept, the idea into something small, right? So here I am thinking I'm doing it the right way. I'm going to create something small, but that something small takes me 30 days or so to kind of get a thin slice. And when I'm done with the thin slice, it's all gray boxed. It's not super fun, but if I were to continue to add content, it would probably become fun. And so I keep chasing it. I keep chasing this dream of fun that it's there somewhere if I just keep piling things on. And I've done this a number of times now. I've probably I can't even count it actually, but let's say I have like 5 active projects right now where they all have a lot of potential, but I'm still chasing the fun after 6 months to a year of development. I think one case, many years of development, off and on development, at a couple hours a day. And the problem is just the complexity of those projects grows, the realization that there's just a tremendous amount of content needed to make the project fun before I could ever release it, before it could ever see the light of day. And a lot of the lessons learned from Series 1 and from developing Series 2 is that I have been overscoping my POCs, my thin slices, all of my ideas. I end up over mechanic ideas. I end up overscoping. And so we are trying to solve that here. And so I'm going to go over my plan and some of the takeaways and the thoughts and the entire iteration with a lot of milestones. So let's get into it. One of the things today I came across was this video here, The Secret to Good Game Ideas by Dr. Joe Baxter Webb. This is a great video, and it's a great video to go watch if you're new to game dev. It's a great video to go watch if even if you're an experienced game dev who's been working on projects for a really long time, because one of the big takeaways for me this morning as I was sort of ramping up to do this video was that I haven't been diving into the creative process for a really long time. I have been focused on finishing big projects. So any thought of going and doing the ideation phase, like where I come up with creative new mechanics and ideas, that's just what it is. It's just added weight and overwhelming because I've already got enough projects. I don't need new ideas. I need to finish my old ideas. And so I realized that I haven't been doing like one of the funnest parts of game dev. And it's because of all the weight I'm carrying forward, which again made me realize there's this concept of moving your old ideas to the graveyard. And I didn't like that idea at first because I was like, well, you're killing the game off. It sounds like you're killing the game off when really what you're doing is you're pausing the game. I always thought of as when I shelve a game and I go to something else that I'm just pausing it until I could figure out the secret to solving the complexity or the mechanics or the fun really. And but what I didn't realize what I was doing was I was just carrying that weight around with me, that I needed to get back to that project, that it's sitting there, it needs to be finished. And that actually that it's a mental burden that you carry with you when you try to carry things forward. So maybe something to think about is that the graveyard concept, there's a lot of value there to just kind of bury, those things which are maybe should be dead that you're keeping alive, knowing when the right time to pull the plug on those things. I think you can always bring them back to life, but you know that you're going to be dealing with a Frankenstein sort of project at that point, right? Where you've got this old legacy code, you've improved so much, and so you would have to go refactor and change. And I'm thinking, you know, maybe instead of bringing something back to life like that, what you do is you just rebuild it, starting with the fun. And we get into that here in a little bit, where the fun should be the focus, right? Taking your fun mechanic and rebuilding it with all the lessons learned, small iteration, get the feedback, the fun feedback on it, and then build it back up into what you've dreamed it to be. And so the graveyard concept is a worthwhile exercise to think about and to remove some of the burden, especially if you find that, like me, you haven't been spending a lot of time in the funnest part of game dev, which is the ideation. So anyways, this video here, I highly recommend, and he goes into a lot of ideation sort of strategies. They're all great. Scamper's one, and I've got the short list here, but definitely go check out the video. The other video that I watched this morning, drank a lot of coffee, is this the paradox of choice, or 5 things to do when you have too many ideas and never finish anything. So that's kind of perfectly in line with what we're doing here, and they hit on a lot of great concepts. And so highly recommend this. But these are things in both videos, these are things that we've come across over the years plenty of times. It's just a matter of maybe, intentionally going after these ideas, figuring out how do I implement these ideas into my dev process. Mini deadlines, right? That's always obvious, reduce the scope and iterate more times. The more you iterate, the more opportunities there are to learn, to retrospect, to reapply those lessons learned to the next iteration. If your projects go super long, you really aren't learning. You're just grinding through content. You're learning very slowly. And we're trying to improve is the dev process, right? The feedback process, the looping feedback process. Getting really good at releasing to the point that we're automating a lot of those steps. And there's some other really great things here. Trust your gut. And the trust your gut one's really good because what you're saying is like, I've got this idea. Let me just go after it. Let me not overthink it. And the way you are able to do that is that you have these other sort of guidelines and strategies in place to protect you. So if you come up with a cool idea because you spent time over here in ideation, you got this really fun idea, what you do is you just go, yeah, let's do it. And you crank it out, but you rely on having a mini deadline, right? Really tiny scope. You rely on finishing that. And then you also rely on quitting. So if the idea, as you're gray boxing it, all of a sudden you realize it's not going to be as fun as you thought it was, you just quit it. But you haven't wasted a tremendous amount of time because you created a mini deadline, right? And then you also are getting fun feedback, that fun loop right away. And so if it works out, that quick idea, then you carry it forward and you add to it in the next iteration. But you take time to retrospect and think about what is the right next step for this idea. So anyways, really great video. Highly recommend that. But the thing I truly recommend is practicing the ideas that are in here more than anything else. All right. So one thing I should mention, if you're still with me, is that if you're watching this video, that means the entire series number 2 is done. So the goals, I set up some goals for myself, like, what are the things I want to accomplish in this next series? I want to practice releasing always. I want to get really good at that. Smaller iterations, more releases. And by releasing, it could be that I'm actually releasing an update or a new project, or it could be that I'm releasing something for a feedback loop. And I want to practice finding the fun, and I want to get feedback on those projects. So I've added a bunch of projects where I'm just designing a mechanic, a fun little mechanic, and then I want to go out and get the feedback and get really good at creating that loop. I want to practice video editing. All of my previous videos in series 1, or even before this, any video I've ever done, I've always done it in one take, and for better or worse, I just release it. So I'm going to try to practice a little bit there, help you guys out. Don't have to hear me rambling on about something perhaps. And then I want to enhance my learning. So be very intentional about, hey, am I actually learning things and getting better here? Is my process getting better? We do that as well. this was my brainstorming session. I just came into this board and I started writing down all of the ideas that I had that could be potential candidates for series number 2 in terms of projects. Some were some new ideas, some new mechanics. Some are existing projects where I wanted to see if there was something I could do in terms of creating a fun new mechanic for it or getting feedback for the project. So I just dumped all my ideas in here, kind of got carried away on a couple where I was designing entire games from the mechanic. And this led to some problems later on, and we'll get into those. But yeah, this was just a brainstorming session to dump a bunch of ideas. And then what I did was I took all the ideas I wanted to carry forward and I put them on this projects page. And basically, I wanted to fill up about a 30-day series worth of projects, mini iterations, right? So lots of little releases, and there's lots of different projects in here, and that's something we could talk about. Am I doing the right thing by having so many different projects, or should I be taking the advice of others and only focusing on one? We'll talk about that more in just a second. What this is supposed to be is just a really quick high-level outline to pull in the projects I think have value, that are helping me achieve my goals, short iterations, more releases, more feedback, more learning. And so that's all this is. And then with this, I was able to go take the next step, which is create the milestones. But let's talk about some of the lessons learned on actually doing all of these different steps. So before we get into the milestones, all of the projects and the details and estimations for the entire series, let's talk about lessons learned, because setting up the goals, the brainstorming that led to the projects that led to all the milestone development, just kind of looping over this quite a few times over the last few days, there were a lot of lessons learned in doing this. And some of the bigger ones were to ask myself, am I working on too many projects? And Rick, who I love, he's such a great personality and does tons of great work for the community. He, in this latest video of theirs, they did, what's the best advice? What's the best game dev advice out there? And one of the things he says is you should focus on one project and not focus on too many projects. And, that's good advice. But at the same time, I think it's good advice when you're getting to a point where you've got a great idea and you want to take that forward to some lengthy extent, whatever that extent is. It's good to focus on it because you're going to finish it, right? But there's also a case to be made about releasing lots of little projects, right? I'm going to be focused on one little project that will help me get feedback on that project and will help me iterate, will help me learn. And so there's value in doing that too. And so what I think is good advice is start with lots of little toy ideas, put them together, throw them out, get some feedback. Is it fun? Is it not fun? And seeing, which one is garnering the most attention, the most excitement, the most likes, the most requests for, hey, where can I play this? Where can I get it? When is it going to be out? And then narrow it down, and then perhaps start thinking about, okay, well, what kind of game can I build around this fun toy, this fun mechanic? And there were some lessons learned for me there too, whereas a lot of times when I developed a mechanic idea, I would immediately develop an entire game, entire theme, entire genre around it, and I would lock that mechanic right into a huge project. But instead, there's actually a lot of value in just focusing on the fun of that mechanic, and then maybe bringing another mechanic in, still completely genre and theme free, and playing around with it and see if you can get some really interesting interactions and experiences. And do that for as long as you can with the mechanic. And then when you think you've got something great, then think about theme, then think about genre. What I'm saying is that a lot of times we can constrain our thinking by overdoing it too much, overscoping. And I did that actually a couple times here. And so we'll talk about that when we get into the milestones. There were 3 projects, 3 mechanic ideas that I put in here that were supposed to be, the goal was to come up with a fun mechanic, a fun toy. But I ended up creating entire games around it because I thought that was the right thing to do. And I ended up realizing it. And from that, I ended up realizing that I need to be asking questions about my projects. And so I created this project health checklist, which is something for me to paste into each of my boards, my project boards, and ask these questions. Are you overscoping? Get me to think about it a little bit. What was the goal? Oh, it was to create a toy. Well, why am I adding all this other stuff if this is just supposed to be a toy? Oops, right? And so there's a number of good questions in here to get me to think about each project. So we did that. So let's dive into it. Here are our milestones for Astropop. So this is an existing project. We're going to add one new feature to it and then get the feedback loop going. So short iteration, looking for fun, looking for feedback. This is another existing project. We're going to create a clip based on the existing content of that project, because this project hasn't seen the light of day. Nobody's ever seen it, and it's stupid. It's a shame. What I'm doing is using it to practice the feedback loop, and also to maybe reinvigorate my motivation for continuing that project, because this is one of the projects where I was stopped by the overwhelming pressure of content. This game is going to need 3-4 more levels of content, and I shouldn't have stopped. I think I finished like the boss for level 1, and it was just a tremendous amount of work. And then I realized I'm gonna have to do this 4 more times and 4 more levels, and I'm gonna have to find more fun for the player to do inside of each level. And so we're playing around with whether this should be in the graveyard or not. And so that's going to be in the next series. We're going to be trying to bury some of my projects. All right, so teleportation demo. This is also another existing project, but there's a mechanic that I want in that project that I haven't done yet. So I'm going to take that as an opportunity to create a fun toy. And really, this should be kind of a toy, but since it's an existing project, it's not really a toy. And for this next one, the Chaos Crate, this is a real big one, because it's like a really great lesson learned here for me, is because I took a concept, a fun concept, Chaos Crate, an idea where you throw a crate and from it comes some random thing, and that random thing will impact the game environment. It'll be a monster, it'll chase you, it'll be a gun so you can shoot the monster that's already chasing you from another crate. It's just like a fun little toy idea. What could you do with it? And what happened though was I came up with the simple mechanic idea, and then I immediately started sort of jotting down all the things you can do, and ended up creating this giant sort of game, right? A thin slice. And it was 25 hours worth of ideas that I put together to sort of demonstrate this mechanic. And I was happy with it. Like, this is a thin slice. This is exactly what we're looking for. And then when I came through and asked the question, is this a fun toy? Because that's what I was kind of going for. And I realized, no, this isn't. This is a fun toy with tons of other things going on. A full game. I had menus, and I had game over, and I had all these other things going on. Tremendous amounts of content. In realizing that I had gone too far with it, I cut a bunch of stuff. I cut it all the way down to where throwing a crate only had one thing come out of it, a bomb. And that bomb could roll around and blow stuff up. And I was like, well, yeah, this is now the right thing, because I've reduced the scope. We're getting the mechanic down to just the basics for demoable purposes. But then I realized, but wait, this was supposed to be a project about finding the fun, not just demoing some boring mechanic. Throwing a crate with a bomb isn't super fun. The fun in Chaos Crate, in this mechanic, was to be that you throw a crate and random things come out and cause all sorts of random events to happen. And that's what's fun, right? The chaos. Chaos is the fun. But then I realized in order to demonstrate that level of fun would require a tremendous amount of content. I would have to create all the things that come out of the crate that create the chaos. And it's like, well, how many things do I need? And it's just like, you need a lot. And then I realized maybe this is not a good project for me right now. I'm looking for small things, small iterations. I'm not looking for things that produce a tremendous amount of content requirements. And so I made the decision to cut this for right now. And I think this is super fantastic. This is sort of the practice, the thing that I'm looking to practice, is getting good at recognizing bad ideas. Fun idea, if fully implemented, and that's one of those tricky things that I'm always getting caught up in, is is not recognizing that a massive amount of content is required for something to be fun. You know, you look at like survival games, those games are insanely boring until you've added all the content, and you have to add a tremendous amount of content. And that's that other problem of always visualizing our games as like AAA games, where teams of people create all these mechanics and all this content, and we visualize our games that way. And then when we get into 6 months to a year of development, we're like, why isn't this fun like those other games that we're playing? And it's just because we're so far behind. But anyways, the next couple here are going to be Godot Valet. I'm going to update the obfuscation feature that it has to improve it. And then we're going to do a little bit of work on testing it to help others use that obfuscation feature. So that's going to improve my velocity overall because I'll be able to just click a button and have that all done. And then another tooling update here is adding a new feature to Resource Manager, but I'm not going to add the new feature. I'm just going to mock it up and play around with the idea and how it might work. And this is going to improve my velocity as well. And the idea being that within Godot Valet, you'd be able to pull in resources into your current project. So instead of doing it through Windows File Explorer, going and finding and digging through all your folders of junk from all your downloads of audio and images and whatever, you'd be able to come in here and it would all be sort of filterable, searchable, and adding meta tags to things and licenses to things that you have licensed, so you can just automatically pull in that license. And then maybe even some common things like Audio Manager and things like that you would just be able to point Godot Valet at your current project and push insert. You know, let's say you have a scene that's like floating text and you use it in all your projects, right? It's just a little animation of floating text for damage and other things, that you'd be able to select the TSCN and the GD file, and this is good for Godot specifically, and that you would be able to just say import, and you would be able to select the location in your current project where you want it to import, and would just pull those two files in. And so it would be sort of a common place to go to be pulling in resources. I think it would speed up my development process, a little bit. I certainly am annoyed by what it takes to go find sound files that I've downloaded before, to grab the licenses, to manage the licenses. And I like to see all that done in one place. So we're going to spend a few hours on doing that, the mock-up part, and then get some feedback. Next thing is another toy. This one, I had also created a bunch of the thin slice around the fun toy. And in recognizing that and through asking all the right questions, I was able to narrow that down, catch it and narrow it down to just the toy. And then so we'll do that, and then we'll practice our feedback loop. And then we have one more toy. This one's interesting because what I did was I came up with the fun mechanic, which is just to rotate a card that spawns units off of the direction of the card that is facing. Probably done already out there, but it's like, that's kind of a fun mechanic. But what I did was I immediately dove into a thin slice game where I could sort of demo what happens when those units come off the card and what do they attack, what attacks them. And because I felt like that's what you would need to sort of to play around with the fun idea. But in realizing I was overscoping my toys, I broke it down. And even though I broke it down, it wasn't far enough again. And I realized, I felt like I needed those units to go attack something in order to demonstrate their usefulness. But still, whatever. In realizing that, I broke it down to just the toy, which is just the card. It's spinning it, maybe spawning random units on it, and then spawning those units off the card. That's the mechanic. But when I got it down to this level, the toy wasn't that fun. That mechanic wasn't that fun. You needed all the other things to be going on. The units to go attack things, and then the strategy of which card you're going to play down. When are you going to upgrade that card? All of that is required for this mechanic to be fun. Now, I think that is sort of a really difficult space to figure out is, yeah, this mechanic's not fun, but if you add it with this other mechanic and all this other content, it could be fun. But that is one of those places we get into constantly, that I get into constantly, is that I think a mechanic is fun. I think if you add it with other mechanics, it's fun. But it's not true until all the content is added and they're all working together. And that's a dangerous place to be, I think, for a solo indie dev. You really don't want to find yourself in one of these places where you're hoping that the fun is going to be there once everything is added. So I think that's one of the biggest lessons and takeaways from this whole series is that as a solo indie game dev, your toys, your starting point should be a lot of fun, I think, before you get going on anything else. Everything else should be additive to that really fun mechanic. And I think if you make those adjustments, you can avoid all of these graveyard projects to begin with. And I wish I would have had some of these really acute insights much earlier on in my dev journey. And so hopefully, there's some light bulbs going off for you, and this will help you sort of catch maybe where you're veering off before it's too late. But if you're still here and you're watching this, it's probably too late. You've got a bunch of really long running projects just like I do, and you're trying to figure that out. And I hope that this also helps you too. Anyway, that is the end of our kickoff meeting. So what we're expecting here is that I'm going to get through all of these projects in the next 30 days, and we will be doing videos for each one. And I don't know if I showed my templates here. So each one of these actually has a very similar template. I have my questionnaire that I added for each of those projects. I have the work that I want to do. I have estimations. So this is expected to take 3 hours to get this work done. Some of these have a release because I actually have a project that's existing. So I'm going to plug it into that and then announce that release. And then I have this lodestone check for almost all the projects, which is this is going to be the effort to create a clip or a post that solicits feedback. And then we're going to spend some time retrospecting and talking about, well, how did my clip go? What kind of feedback did I get? How many likes did it get? Did it under or overperform my expectations? And so that should be fun. That's going to be something new that I haven't been doing for any of my projects. Most of my stuff never sees the light of day, and we're going to change that. And then we're going to track any unplanned work from this. We're going to do a mini retro for each project, and then we're going to do we're going to add a video for the project. We're going to splice it in to our series videos. So instead of, I think in series 1 I was doing one video a week, and in this series I'm going to be doing one video per project, per iteration, and then so we'll probably, I don't know how it'll work out exactly. We'll learn this together, but that's going to be a new format. So that's kind of some of what you can expect in the series. I'm excited for it. I think this approach is helping me learn a tremendous amount. It's helping me improve way more rapidly than I could ever improve by pursuing a single project. I'm really happy about it, and hope to share it all with you. So see you soon in the next one. Cheers, bye. All right, welcome back. It's only a day later for me or so, and it's probably just a few seconds for you between transitions, and that's what this video, or that's what this little segment's going to be, is a quick retro on the kickoff and the video editing process, because that was something I wanted to start doing as part of this series. So we chose Filmora, which you can see here in the background. First time really using video editing software, and first time using Filmora, and pretty easy. It does have an annual cost or whatever that's reasonable, but I didn't need a whole lot. I just said ChatGPT, give me top 10 and here's what my needs are, and it spit out this Filmora, so I went after it. Didn't think too much about it. Got the spinning logo in there. I was going to use Godot for this because that's that's where I know my animations, but Filmora actually provides a drag and drop sort of spin and fade and all that. So we ended up using that. So far so good. It did take like an hour and a half or something of editing ums and ers and es and coughs and throat clearings out. So that was really surprising. We're going to, as I am now very conscious of all those things, we're going to try to improve that on the initial recording. Need to figure out how to do that so that it doesn't take so much time in the editing process. So the other big takeaway for me from doing the whole kickoff and is just realizing that this energy and intensity is persistent, because that I have for this series, for this project, for what I'm doing. It's because I'm delivering to you guys. I'm delivering to, even if the audience didn't exist, I'm still delivering, and it's so powerful, and I can't highly recommend it enough. It's a positive energy. You're just super motivated because you know that you're going to do something and deliver that something and talk about that something, it's so much more powerful than with your long-term projects where you're just like, well, I'm gonna gray box it till 6 months from now, and then when it's in good shape, then I'll start thinking about delivering it to the world. And I think you miss out on all that real powerful free energy that you get when doing shorter iterations where you're going to deliver something. So something to consider, something to think about. It's been certainly interesting to experience. Anyway, we're gonna kick off development, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers, bye.